Dr. Blevins here with the last day of week 5 and first day of week 6. This is pretty much a deload, as I've spoken of before. Dug myself a little too deep into the fatigue debt hole with some deadlifting. My hips were getting really beat up, and pretty much what that came down to is I was just doing too much heavy block pulling after my main deadlift work. Too many sets that were RP 9, 9.5, or 10. And that came to a head on the triple of 675 that I was doing. And really I was planning that lift at the completely wrong time. First off, like a few things. When you do triples, and especially if you're thinking about, planning openers out of triples in a meet, because triples are usually about 90% of your 1 rep max. One of the things to remember is that your lifts aren't always the same. And so your triple on bench press may only give you another, 7%. So let's say you do a triple. Instead of that being, 90 or 92%, maybe it's really closer to 93 or 94% of your 1 rep max. People seem to be able to do reps better with bench press, and then when they start adding weight, they can't make as big of jumps. That might have to do with the smaller amount of muscle mass used for that lift in comparison to the deadlift. Oftentimes, somebody can only double 92, 93, maybe 94% of their 1 rep max deadlift, and they can only triple, 87 to 89% of their 1 rep max deadlift. What that means is you may have a bigger gap percentage-wise on your deadlift reps than your bench reps. So not all triples are created equal. A triple at 90% on bench press might be something that's an RPE, 9 or an RPE 8.5, whereas a triple at 90 on deadlift might be an RP 9.5, RPE 10. And that's something to pay attention to when you're planning programs. Is you want to make sure that you're not overdoing the percentages, that you're not going beyond what your specific lifts allow you to do. Now the other side of that is you're only going to learn that through trial and error, because depending on your leverages, if you have great leverages for deadlift, then maybe it's going to be less taxing on your system. Also, if you're a smaller lifter, maybe you're in a lower weight class, some of the lower, the 165s, 181s, something like that, you might be able to sustain a higher level of heavy work and be able to do reps with that and not be as fatigued coming away with it. For me, I had done heavy block pulls 3 weeks in a row and then had this max attempt, this max triple. Not only was that a poor decision, but also throwing a max triple in is a bad decision at this point anyways. Well, it's not necessarily a full-blown hypertrophy block. The overall volume that I've been running for the first 3 weeks of the program was about 115,000 pounds of work set volume a week. Really, that's much closer to my kind of maximum recoverable volume level for a hypertrophy block, at least as I understand it. Now, before you're like, well, how do you know what it is, or what's the formula I can use to get my maximum recoverable volume, my MVR? Well, there's no formula. It's all going to be individual. And some of the, I was recently reading, I think it's called The Scientific Principles of Strength Training. It's the new Juggernaut book that Chad Wesley Smith, Mike Ishratel, and I think a couple of other authors wrote. Now, I read through that to kind of just look at my training and see where some of the issues are with my fatigue management. And the book covers a lot of good things. Also, Mike Ishratel has a lot of videos on his channel that go through in him explaining a PowerPoint of some of the similar processes. In any case, your MVR is something you find, it's the maximum amount of volume or fatigue that you can put on your body where you are unable to recover from it by the next microcycle. So he talks about microcycles on a week-long basis, and these work together into the mesocycle, which would maybe be a 10-week-long period of time or 4-week-long, whatever it is. In any case, if you work out, you're squatting on Monday, and maybe you're doing a light squat Thursday, and then you're doing deadlift Saturday, if you're not ready that next Monday to go heavy again on squats, you've exceeded your maximum recoverable volume for your legs the previous week. And so you want to train most of your weeks, probably 75 or 80% of your weeks, just under your maximum recoverable volume, kind of stair-stepping up to it, And then on 1 week, you overload and go beyond your maximum recoverable volume, followed by a slight deload. And when I say slight deload, it's not a week off. It's not you don't go to the gym. It's just that you might use 70% of the volume that you normally do, and maybe 70 to 85% of the intensity. So it's a little bit lighter day. You're taking a step backwards. And that's the way you allow your body to recover from the overload event, that week where you went above your maximum recoverable volume, and have the adaptations, get those beneficial adaptations. That said, what I did on block pulls was I pushed beyond my maximum recoverable volume on deadlifts for pretty much 3 weeks in a row, and then worked up to a max attempt when I would need to be the most ready, and almost tie one of my best triple deadlifts. And so when I look back at that lift, I was like, wow, I'm actually kind of surprised I got 2 reps, period. I should have gotten maybe 1 rep or no reps. And the downside of that has been for the last week and a half, I've had some, what I would call like really minor bursitis in my hips. It feels kind of like a burning sensation, but it's something I can work with. It's not an injury. It's not going to keep me out. But I just pushed too hard. The muscles, the ligaments, everything is just really taxed. And to have 3 weeks of deadlifting heavy was just foolish. It's a good thing that I did it this far away from nationals, hoping that it won't affect me or throw me off too much. But I still have some mock meet stuff coming up that I'm going to have to hold tentative now, because I don't know if I'm going to be able to push it hard with my hips. In this workout, just working with 505 here on sumos for 2 sets of 4, very light compared to what I've been doing in the cycle, but it still hurt my hips a little bit in the workout, especially the first set. It was not comfortable. It was not as easy as I would have liked to have been. However, it certainly wasn't injury provoking, and it's now about a day or 2 after this workout, and I feel better. My hips are not hurting me nearly as much. I can definitely tell that I'm recovering and moving out of this hole. Now the thing is, someone might say, and this can be one of the errors of the fatigue debt principle, you work yourself into this fatigue debt and then you have a higher peak on the other side. So the more fatigue you accrue, the higher your peak is going to be. Well, that's not necessarily true. You can dig yourself so deep into a hole with fatigue that when you start recovering, you don't recover and adapt past where your baseline was. Instead, the only thing your body can do is survive. And so you recover back to where you were originally at best. That's why overtraining, it can work for you if you do it a little bit in a highly planned way, but it can definitely work against you, because if you actually overtrain, all you can do is alleviate volume to get back to baseline. So there's a bunch of light weeks in there. And then on top of that, you have to train all over again to fatigue yourself back down a little bit and then have an adaptation over. And so if it takes you a month to get overtrained, it might take you a month to recover from that, and then might take you another month to actually make some progress. So it can really eat up a lot of your time, a lot of your year, and that's just going to be pounds off your total. However, the only way to find out where that maximum recoverable volume point is to push it. And that's something, it's why it is so important to track your workouts. I cannot emphasize it enough, how you need to write things down and keep track of what you're doing, so if things are off, you can go back and start to figure out why. And that brings me back to 1 Corinthians 9. That you do not run aimlessly, and you do not box as one beating the air. Don't waste your time and spin your wheels if you're serious about powerlifting, or if you're serious about any strength training sport. Don't waste your time doing the same things over and over again. Don't waste your time not overloading so that you don't have adaptations. Don't waste your time under training. Don't waste your time overtraining. Get your training organized, write it down, and pay attention to what you're doing, so that you can keep making progress and get yourself unstuck. It's very helpful to have someone to bounce ideas off of. That's why a coach is a helpful person to assist you in this journey. But it's also something that you can do on your own and that you should start doing if you haven't been doing it. And so that's kind of my public service announcement for today, is track your training and pay attention to what you're doing. In any case, I hope wherever you're at, you're all doing well. Blessings.